What is up, everyone? It is Rachel. Welcome back to my channel. And so today is super exciting because I'm going to be doing interviews with our newest study hall college consulting members. And so today I am joined by Navya, who recently graduated from Berkeley. Navya is currently a medical assistant, and right now she is applying to med schools. And so if you are new to my channel, you should definitely check out Study Hall College Consulting, where we specialize in reviewing college applications and consulting one-on-one with students and parents who may have questions. So definitely check out our website and social medias. On our website, we post weekly blogs full of advice, and then on our social medias, we also post a bunch of tips and tricks. So without further ado, let's get this video started. Awesome. So it looks like we are recording via Zoom now. Navya, if you want to introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Navya. I just graduated from Berkeley this past May with a double major in public health and molecular cell biology, all of that on a pre-med track. I am currently in my gap year between graduating undergrad and starting medical school. During this 1 year, I am working as a medical assistant and scribe at a private practice in San Francisco.
So in this video, we are going to be talking all about pre-med advice, specifically for UC Berkeley students, since Navya was on the pre-med track at Berkeley and is applying to grad programs right now. So because there is no specific pre-med program at Berkeley, what kinds of majors should students look into or do?
Definitely a source of confusion, I think, for a lot of people. There are definitely other universities internationally in the United States that do have like a specific pre-med major. Berkeley is not one of those schools. Frankly, that's something that I wanted in a school. I didn't want to be a pre-med major. I didn't really want to feel like I was like roped into this bubble of being pre-med. But Berkeley is one of those schools where we don't have a pre-med major, but we have kind of this like rough pre-med track. So there is a pre-health like advising office, and they have advisors, they have peer advisors that you can meet with if you would like. But personally, I found the most help from talking to my peers, and all of my peers told me kind of the same thing over and over again. And that was that you can really major in anything. The main idea is that you have to complete the core required classes for medical school. So that's like introduction to bio, chemistry, physics, math. You have to take 2 semesters of English. And then there's a couple like required courses like sociology, psychology, that kind of thing. So you could theoretically major in anything at all. And as long as you complete those required classes and anything else that any other schools you're interested in might want, then you're completely on the same pre-med path as anyone else. For myself, I came into Berkeley knowing that I wanted to study biology. So I chose a biology major. And then when I came to Berkeley, I learned about what the public health major was. And I realized, well, hey, this is really in line with the type of medicine that I want to practice in my future. So I ended up taking on that double major. So I would say at Berkeley, public health and molecular cell biology are probably one of the 2 most common, quote, pre-med majors. There's also another bio major called integrative biology. In a different college, the College of Natural Resources, there's a major called molecular environmental biology. There's also nutrition toxicology. I know people that either double majored in like bio and something else, like bio and computer science, and they're still pre-med, or like bio and econ and they're still pre-med. There's also people that major in like just anthropology and they take their required courses and they're still on the pre-med track. So really you can just pick and choose your different interests and see what best works with your schedule. At the end of the day, like it's 4 years of college. Students in different universities and like different countries, really, they don't often get the opportunity to go to college before going to medical school. So my advice would just be to really study what you want to study. Don't think so much about what will like look good on a medical school application. Honestly, data now is showing that the more non-traditional applicants are getting in more and more than, quote, traditional applicants. So if you want to study like English lit or something like that, and you really love English lit and you're just going to take the pre-med classes, honestly, that might give you a slight advantage. So just something to think about.
Great. That's a ton of really good information. So, sort of going off of something you said where Berkeley doesn't have a pre-med track, do you think that students should choose a college and apply to colleges that have pre-med tracks specifically? Or do you think it didn't hinder you at Berkeley without a pre-med track?
Honestly, I don't really think it makes a difference. The pre-med track is kind of just a rough term that people say they're on. I don't really know how it works on other universities, so I can't really speak to that. But I know that, I have friends on the East Coast that are on the pre-med track, but really that just means that they're tracking themselves to make sure they're on the right track. And if they want to meet with an advisor to make sure they're not falling off of that track, they can totally do that. But really, it's like less than 10 classes, or maybe it's 10 classes, something like that, in the grand scheme of how many of her classes you're going to take in college. So I personally don't think it's too difficult to plan out the classes that you need to take. My advice would just be, like, before you come to college, or when you're first looking at different classes at your university or at Berkeley, just kind of map out when you want to take the required courses. Most people, I would say, like, at least 75% of the people are able to finish those required classes in their first 2 years out of the 4 years of undergrad. Or even if you're a transfer student, you can finish all of your required classes at community college and maybe just take like a couple more like upper division biology classes or other science classes if you're interested when you come to your transferred university. But really, at the end of the day, I don't think it's too difficult. I really don't think you need to have that cushion of a pre-med track or a pre-med advisor, or like some specific pre-med course or path you're supposed to be on. It's really designed to be simple, like less than 10 classes. It doesn't really differ from medical school to medical school. So just do your research, but really, I don't think that should be a guiding force when you're choosing where to go to school.
So, speaking of college class schedules, for incoming students, freshmen, or transfer students, what would a typical first year schedule look like if they're intending to apply to medical schools, do the pre-med track?
Yeah, so I think this really differs based on one, any units that you might be coming in with. So, for example, if you're a transfer student, you might have already completed all of the requirements that you need to take. But in terms of the required courses, I'd say mostly that comes with first year freshman students. I would say on average, your freshman year, your first and second semester, you will be taking like one science class, one math class, maybe an English class if you wanted to. But really, other than that, you can kind of take whatever you want. So for myself, I took Introduction to General Chemistry and Intro to Math, like the first semester of math, my first semester. And then I took Anthropology, which is one of those like kind of suggested classes, but not really required classes for medical school. I kind of just took it because it also counted for a Berkeley requirement. And then my second semester, I took an Intro to Bio class, and then I finished that series of math, and I just took other classes that I wanted to take. So it really kind of follows a path, I think, and pretty much everyone does the same thing. I would say starting around your second year, if you're a first year coming into Berkeley, your second year, a lot of people choose to kind of double up on science classes in particular. So I know people that took like chemistry and physics together, and that works well for them because they're able to get rid of the requirements kind of quickly and then focus on whatever they want to focus on later on. For myself, I kind of knew that that would be too difficult for me. I think the science classes are very involved. On top of that, the science classes at Berkeley are very involved, and I tend to, I think, take a little bit longer than my peers to understand things. So with that, I chose to kind of just take one science class every semester. Of course, with that, I did have to take a summer class. I had to finish bio over the summer. I had to take other classes over the summer. But really, I think it's totally possible to just take one science class if you want to. But to answer the question, if you're a first year, freshman year student, I would say both of the first semesters that you're here, just take one science class, one math class, and then take whatever else you want. If you're a transfer student, either do those classes that you haven't already completed in your community college or whatever school that you transferred from, or if not, you can just take any upper division courses that you're interested in, or you can just not worry about pre-med at all and just take the classes that you want because you've already finished the requirements.
A lot of students at Berkeley say those introductory classes that you just mentioned, like Chem 1A, the introductory maths, bios, are considered weeder classes. So they are very, very difficult to weed out people that can't necessarily handle like pre-med or the pre-med track. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think this is a pretty difficult question, one that I've talked to a lot of people about. Frankly, for myself coming into Berkeley, I knew that about the university. I knew that that's kind of what I should be expecting. Number one, I think it really depends from class to class. It really depends also on the professor that you have. For myself, I would say in general, all those introductory classes are really big at Berkeley in particular. Like they can be 300, 400, 500, like sometimes even 700 students. I would say those classes are really difficult. I did take AP classes in high school and I felt like it did prepare me to some extent, but there's really no amount of preparation you can do to really prepare for the rigor that will be like Berkeley science classes. I will say like my first semester, frankly, even my second semester that I was at Berkeley, I struggled with trying to keep up with the material or trying to feel like I was understanding the previous week's information and connecting it to the next week's information. But slowly you do kind of get the hang of it. I think it takes a good like semester or two to figure out how do I learn best? Like, do I work well in group settings or individual settings, or do I just need to talk to the professor about more practice materials? I think the biggest thing people underestimate about these giant introductory classes is that there's no help when really there is help. You just kind of have to seek it. Berkeley is one of those schools where they don't really hold your hand at all, which for some people doesn't work out and makes them feel like it is more of a weeder class and it's meant to like out them of the pre-med track. But if you're really committed to it and you do want to succeed, I really think there are resources for you. I would say most of the professors that I've had have all been approachable. They all have office hours, which are times you can go and chat with them in their office, ask questions. There's also tutoring. Like, for example, like the organic chemistry classes, those are kind of notorious for being some of the most difficult ones. Those ones had like group office hour settings with like the TAs and students, and you can kind of work together with people, which I thought was really helpful. We also have a tutoring center at Berkeley. So really like the classes are difficult. There's no way I can work around that. They are meant to be difficult and it does take time to get used to the setting, especially if you're coming from high school where maybe you felt like the information kind of clicked a little bit more, but when you come to college, you kind of have to wipe all of that and start over. So that was difficult for me. I needed to figure out, okay, I actually work better when I'm alone. I have to review the lecture the next day. I need to make my own notes. In lecture, I found it really helpful to like sit in the first few rows, or at least like the first half of the room. That kind of makes you feel like it's a smaller room rather than a bigger room that's like meant to overwhelm you. My general advice would be sit in the front, ask questions, take advantage of the resources that are there. And even though it's a difficult class, like make sure you're putting your best foot forward. Like don't let that like aura of it being a weeder class or like supposed to be a really difficult class, like don't think about it like that. I think for me, when I did think about it like that, it made my mindset kind of bite me in the butt later. But when I did start to kind of get the hang of things, figure out my own routine, things got a lot better.
I definitely agree about sitting in the front of the classroom, especially for these big classes. If you're always sitting in the back, you might have distractions. You might go on your phone. People might have laptops that are like surfing the internet and you can see their screen and get distracted. So I definitely agree about sitting in the front of the classroom. A lot of students at Berkeley and online talk about Berkeley's classes as having grade deflation. So I guess would you be able to explain some of your experiences with grading at Berkeley and the pre-med classes that you have taken? Is it difficult to maintain a high GPA so that when you're applying to med schools, you have that high GPA?
Grade deflation is kind of in line with the weeder class discussion. Just to kind of define it, I guess deflation is just the idea that the score that you get on an exam might not translate to the actual grade that you receive for that exam or in the class in general. Deflation typically refers to your score getting deflated and reflecting a lower grade overall. So for example, like if you get a 90% on an exam, but the average was like 70% or something, they might deflate your grade from a 90% to like a B plus or something like that. Honestly, that has never happened to me. Frankly, that's probably because our exams are difficult to begin with. I would say most professors, they will remove those like outlier students that are getting, more extreme good grades compared to the average of the class. And they'll remove those outliers and then they'll curve the rest of the class. So if you get a good grade, if you do well in an exam or in a class, more often than not, you will get rewarded as such. They're really meant to help you and really not meant to hurt you at all. For example, like my math class, my professor, she chose to curve the class at the end of the semester, it was a bit frustrating just because throughout the semester, we would get our exams back and the average would be some number, and I might have been below that number, but I didn't know like what that would actually translate to until the end of the semester. So that can be kind of frustrating. I would say there are also classes where if there's 3 midterms and a final, they might do something like, okay, your lowest midterm score might be dropped and your final will count for a little bit more, and that might help you overall with your grade. My math class was one of those classes. So her policy was that if you did better on the final than any or one of the midterms, the final would override your grade. So although I don't know specifically if that's what happened, frankly, I think that is what helped me do well in those math classes. I studied really hard for the final. I felt really prepared for the final. I think it wasn't until the end of the semester where things started clicking for me. So with that, I did well in the final, and I think overrided the grades that I got in the midterm.
So my final question for you is, why are you pursuing an MD MPH program?
MD is like medical doctor. It's like doctorate of medicine. It's kind of the typical medical track. So I am applying those programs. There are also some other like combined programs. There's a few schools that do MD JD, which is like med school and law school in one. There's MD MBA, so that's like medical doctor and master's of business. So if you're interested in business and health, you could do something like that. There's also ones that are like MD and public policy masters. But the one in particular that I'm interested in is the MD and the MPH portion. So the MPH is Masters in Public Health. Typically, of course, the Masters in Public Health can be done outside of the medical setting. So I know a lot of people that after undergrad, they wanted to pursue a master's before applying to medical school. So you can do a 1 or 2 year program in public health and get your master's and then be able to apply to medical school. For myself, I wanted to take my gap year to work and then go to school later. So, which is why the MD and PH like dual programs work really well for me. At least they intrigue me the most. Typically, these programs, rather than the 4-year kind of traditional MD track, they are like 5-year programs, or they're like accelerated 4-year programs where you have to take your public health classes in between summers or like winter breaks or things like that. But the main idea is, for me, as I said, one of my majors at Berkeley was public health. And it's something that I plan on carrying in my future as a physician. I think, the idea of community health and combining social determinants of health into your practice as a physician is really important. And for me, is like the central reason why I chose to do medicine. It's, growing up, I always felt like there was something more to medicine than just like the typical, diagnosis. You give you a prescription, you get you on some sort of like recovery path. But I think there's so much more than that. I think growing up doing nonprofit work really taught me that, education, for example, is such a defining feature of your health as a person. Like if you are able to go to school, if you are able to learn about nutrition and what you're supposed to do to take care of yourself, of course, you're going to have more favorable health outcomes in the future. So I think that was really important for my like Berkeley undergrad career, but also like just to solidify my decision to do that in medical school.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much for taking the time and doing this interview today. Hopefully you all watching have found it helpful. If any of you have any questions, definitely leave a comment down below on this video. And if you wanted to talk one-on-one with Navya about anything that she mentioned in this video, the pre-med track at Berkeley, finding research opportunities at Berkeley, or for summer internships, applying to med school, and her experiences, definitely check out Study Hall College Consulting to schedule a one-on-one college and career coaching call with her. So thank you all so much for watching. It really, really means a lot, and we will see you all next time.